Hello and welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, Nicole. I'm excited to be here.
Fabulous. So, what are you up to these days specifically? I believe you've got a new book out, and what are you doing and how are you working with people and supporting them at their highest and best?
So, in the past decade or so, 15 years almost, I've built many companies. I've been on the background of many different companies, and I personally was able to create a wonderful life for myself. And in the process, especially wealth related, because like you mentioned previously in my introduction, that I grew up in India in a small town called Jaipur with 23 other people sharing the same space, which of course wired me in a way where I was very excited about abundance and wealth and money and success and how traditional success looks like, how people share what success should be like. And because of that motivation, early part of my career, I was very focused on that. I was very focused on saying, hey, how do we create more wealth for myself? Right. And in that process, while I was creating wealth for myself, I I kind of paid for that wealth with my health, with my relationship, with my family, because I kind of, it wasn't like I was some antisocial person. I was there available, but not really present, not really there. My health was deteriorating. I had lost all the connection with my parents, my family. I had lost connections with my lifetime friends, and really just a successful life if you're looking from the outside in, but fairly unsuccessful and dissatisfied life from inside out. And that led me to on this quest to saying, hey, is that what it is that what it always has to be, that if you become wealthy you have to emotionally be drained or spiritually be drained and so forth. And that discovery, that journey, that quest led me to find what now is inside my book, Live Big, but also led me to find that there is a possibility of change that lies ahead of us. There's a possibility of you can create a phenomenally successful business and phenomenally successful life in context of abundance. And you can also have the balance of saying, hey, I get to live more, I get to play more, I get to have the emotional balance, I get to have the spiritual balance. You can spend time with your family, your friends, your loved ones, all of that. And while actually growing a company as well, not being all beat down by anxiety and depression and other mental illnesses that are starting to come over for entrepreneurs. So really my quest started as my personal journey to find for myself. It wasn't an intention to write a book, or there was no intention to do anything beyond that. But as I went through the journey myself, I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one that was going through that. It's a lot of other entrepreneurs that go through the same challenges. And in the process, most of them sacrifice their families, sacrifice their health, and only later in life do they realize that they could have done better. They could have done things differently. They had the choice of really saying, hey, maybe I don't have to be anxious. Maybe I don't have to be unsatisfied with what's happening in life. So that's really drove me to create Live Back. Yeah.
Amazing. And it has been quite the journey as I understand it. So, can you take us back to why did you come to the US in the first place? And how did that happen?
So I started traveling around the world. So I was in India, and then I started traveling around the world when I was 19. It started with me traveling to Europe for a student organization, volunteer student organization that I was a part of. Then I came back to India, did about a year or two there. Then I started traveling again, and I got and started working with a company called Mindvalley. I started there as an intern about a decade ago, and there, as I started working with the company, I moved to Malaysia. That's where the headquarters of the company is. So I was in Malaysia for almost 8 years, 7 8 years. But as I was then going through my journey of rediscovering myself and started Mindvalley Teach, started Evercoach, started working towards creating other enterprises which had that balance for me as well. Uh, what happened is, in the process, I met a wonderful woman who is now my wife and about to be, at the time of recording this interview, about to be the mother of my first kid, my first son. So I met her, and we decided we want to travel the world together. So we traveled around the world for almost 2.5 years. And through that journey, while I was discovering myself again, while I was trying to find that balance, while I was doing all of that, what happened is we decided that we wanted to build a family. We wanted to have kids. We wanted to actually build a family. So we had to make a decision for a little bit at least to settle down somewhere. And so we picked Los Angeles in LA as a city. We traveled around to figure out which one's the one that fits our needs, fits our lifestyle, gives that balance of travel and so forth. And Los Angeles, California was the one that we picked.
Got it. So I didn't even realize that the head office was in Malaysia.
It is.
So is that then when you were, I believe, 24, you started as was it a brand ambassador,
No, I
brand
started as an intern.
manager? Oh, intern.
Intern. I was an intern, and what had happened was, it's a funny story, because I was hired as an intern. I wasn't supposed to do anything that was a very important job. I was supposed to just be an intern that would learn, because that was my journey. Before joining Mindvalley, I had started another company in partnership with a media house in India, one of the top media houses in India, which was a social network that was designed for India. At that point, Facebook wasn't that big a deal. Like, it hadn't really landed in India yet. So we started building the social media platform. We are starting to get some traction on it. And then Facebook came in. It was superior technology, a lot more people on it, and so forth. So we didn't stand a chance in front of that. But technology was not that great. Neither did I understand how to really build platforms at that time. So I kind of, like, we shut that operation down. But one thing that I realized was internet is the name of the game. It is going to be the future. It is going to be the thing that's going to build how we are going to interact in the future. But in India, there was no company that was doing a phenomenal job at it or even focused at it. And so I started asking around, and one of my friends who was a part of that student organization I talked about previously was in Malaysia. And they told me there was this little company at that time. It was only like 10 employees, 15 employees at that time, ran out of a small house, didn't even have a proper office. We had to work from couches and stuff. Had an opening, and they said, all right, we want an intern to support some website builds or whatever. I was like, hey, I just want to learn. I don't care if I qualify, I'll just go. And that's how I joined the company. So at 24 years old, I had quit a decent paying job for being an intern in a startup which had no future at that time, or at least it looked like had no future at that time. And I joined the company, but what had happened was, as I was joining the company, the person who was supposed to be my manager, who was the brand manager of that particular unit, basically had done some really bad job in the last 2 months. So it takes a little while for one person to go from a country to another country to actually go do the job there, right? So it was almost 2 months before I was hired to I actually showing up to Malaysia. Had done some really bad performances in a row. And so they had to demote that person to go to the place where they would be working with me at the same level, kind of like they were kind of training me to be the brand manager. So I came in thinking I will be an intern, but because there was nobody leading the brand, I kind of became the brand manager because the only other person working on the brand had just been demoted. So it was almost like it was coincidence, mystery of the universe, whatever you want to call it, that I was given that chance very early on, which I was not hired for.
Yeah, and then you kind of from the story I listened to, you sort of were sinking very quickly and not realizing what the expectations were, but them kind of being ready to almost fire you as soon as you started.
Yes.
How did you deal with that and turn it around?
So let's backtrack and say why I was about to get fired. So it was basically I got this title of brand manager, right? So now you're the brand manager, which means you're supposed to manage the brand. And I come in, it's late December, so it's everybody's almost about to go on holidays or have gone on holidays already. It's like after 15th of December or something like that. And so I walk in, and there's literally like 3 people out of the 10 that are in the company at this point. Now, like I don't even know what I have to do. Somebody gives me a bunch of reading material, say, you read this over holidays, I'll see you in January. So I'm reading this in January. I show up, I'm thinking it's normal, whatever, like I'll just go do my job. The month goes by, I'm just doing whatever people are telling me to do, because again, I don't really understand my job. It's a startup, so nobody really knows their job in a way. So February comes, and starting February, the founders of the company are sitting down, and they're like, all right, Ajit, so let's look at your review. And I was like, all right, this is the revenue that we did, and this is what we did last month, and so forth. this is my first meeting ever as a brand manager, right? Because these guys have also just come back from holiday. And they go, Ajit, but that's not our target was much higher than what you just achieved last month. I was like, yeah, we are short by like 100K or something like that. So I was like, they were like, well, you're short by $100,000 there. I was like, I know, but I mean, I just joined. I don't really know. I'm just trying to figure this out. And one of them says, well, we can't really help you with that. You need to figure out how to generate another 100 grand in the next 1 month. Because if you don't, I'm sorry, but you're not the right person for this job, because that's your responsibility. Now, I'm this new kid who doesn't know much. I'm like, okay, it must be easy to generate 100 grand for any company. So like, maybe I'll figure it out. So what I did then is, the first thing I did was to ask around, is to say, hey, I've got this task. I have to create this $100,000 in a span of 30 days. Actually, not even 30, because it was February. So like 28 days is what I have to generate $100,000. And I don't know what to do. So one person, his name is Juan, and I tell the story actually in the book as well, is where he says, hey, Ajit, I want you to go ahead and study these materials, and let's brainstorm after that how we can do this for you. So I go back to home all night, I study, I come back next day, I go, Ajit, Juana has these 3-4 ideas. Like, all right, let's try these ideas. We try those ideas. One of the ideas sticks. We generate $100,000, and I report that next month. So March starting, I'm reporting the revenue. I'm like, yes, and we recovered the 100 grand that we didn't make in the previous month. So this is again the same team that is reviewing me, right? And these are all seniors in the company, and they go, wow, that's amazing. I was like, well, you told me that's what I was supposed to do, so I did it. So he was like, well, Ajit, I don't think you realize that nobody ever in this company has ever generated $100,000 in a single month extra to what they were already doing. This is the biggest campaign we have ever run. And that was just mind blowing. And that also gave me one perspective to life. And it is beautifully put together by Les Brown. He's a famous motivational speaker. And he says one line, and I might misquote him, but I'll try not to. He says something to the tune of, nobody rises to a low expectation. Nobody rises to a low expectation, right? And that's really what my big learning that day was, is to be able to say, hey, there's never a time that I would have an expectation of myself that was too high, because it's an expectation, and you can raise it as high as you want, but you're never going to work really hard, or you're not going to try and figure out how to solve a problem if that problem is invisible to you. That expectation is invisible to you. If that expectation is visible to you, you will rise up to it. And that was one of the key learnings that have helped me throughout the life ever since after that, is to always have a high expectation of myself and of people that I work with, and of people, of just generally humanity. I have a higher standard, higher expectation of humanity.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And so from that realization, how then over the next few years did that help you parlay where you were into the steps to where you are now? Because in this relatively short period of time, you've gone from that to today. So can you walk us through kind of just some of the twists and turns? And also, I'm just trying to find, you have also a 4x4 strategy. So maybe if you can share where that came from and what
Sure.
it is, that would be amazing.
Sure. Why don't we start with the first question first? How did I get here? Right. So let's start there, and then we'll talk about 4x4, because it will actually show how a strategy like that evolves as well. Right. So how I got here is more a journey that started, I would say, almost from my childhood. It almost started when I was 14, 15 years old, because like we previously mentioned, I grew up in a household of 23 other people sharing. This was my cousins and my parents' cousins and my grandparents, and everybody lived together in the same space. And I'm an introvert by my nature, not just like by nature. I am an introverted person, which means I like space, I like quiet, I like my time, right? And that's fueling for me when I get to have that. And I didn't get to have that in my house, which as a teenager especially, I struggled even more, because for me it became really hard to find, how do I keep moving forward while I was getting bombarded with all these different things happening around me. And I became really driven to create abundance in my life. for which I started to try and train for becoming an engineer, which didn't work out. And then I started to go ahead and experiment with different things, which is where I ended up in a student organization. The reason why I tell you these stories is because often when we look at our story, we think our story was created 3 months ago or 3 years ago, or we look at somebody else's story, we think their story was starting 3 months or 3 years ago because they blew up at that time, right? But the stories are usually not that short. The stories are much, 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 much before. My story started when I was 13, 14 years old, while I was making decisions like saying, I don't want to settle this. I don't want to live in this house. I don't want to have my life be this way. I want to have my own house. And that drive that started at that point drove me to make decisions that would eventually get me to where I am today. Because those decisions were not one decision that led me to do this. They were decisions after decisions after decision. At every crossroad, every single time when I was about to quit engineering, people told me, you're not going to be successful. Because, well, everybody becomes an engineer in India, right? You become a doctor, engineer, accountant. That's what you do in India. If you don't do that, you're not going to be successful, right? So that was the first thing. And I was not even like 20. I was like 17, 18 years old. And people were like, oh, you're going to fail. That's not going to work. Then when I went to ISEC, people were like, what the hell are you doing? This student crazy body, why are you working for free? You're in the age of earning money, or at least you should, because now you're anyways not going to be an engineer. You're not going to be successful. When I got my first job and I was about to quit that job to go to Mindvalley as an intern, same thing happened. It's like, you're not going to be successful. What the heck are you doing? Then a year and a half later, when I was about to quit Mindvalley to start a company with Mindvalley, in partnership with Mindvalley and some other companies, again, I was told you're not going to be successful. Why would you quit such a fantastic job where you're growing so fast? Because I was making 100 grand type of campaigns every other day, right? So it was like, you're not going to be successful. And I joined back Mindvalley as a co-founder of multiple companies with Mindvalley. Again, I was being doubted because it was like, what are you doing? You're fickle-minded. You're not going to be successful. When I became the CEO of Mindvalley, and after being the CEO for a good time, and I decided that, no, I want a bigger life for myself. I need to live big, and I'm going to start my own company, again, in partnership with Mindvalley and without partnership with Mindvalley. I'm going to go ahead and go all out on my own. I was again told what a stupid idea that was. So you're constantly challenged, and you have to make those decisions, even if people constantly tell you that it's not going to work out for you. I was told when I first wanted to get on stage and speak on stage that I will never make it because I'm from India. I have an accent, which you can see, obviously. I have a weird name, which sometimes is hard to pronounce. So it's not going to work out for me. I'm not going to be the successful coach or speaker or whatever, author, unheard of, that I would ever be. But the question or the challenge that constantly I was faced with was doubt that everybody else had on me and doubt that I had on myself, honestly. But you had to keep doing it for me to come this far in my journey, right? So it has always been that ideas that I've had or businesses I wanted to start or things that I wanted to do have constantly been challenged, constantly been said, well, it's not going to work out for this guy. I don't know what he's thinking, right? It's a stupid idea type of thing, which I'm sure you're aware of as well. It does happen with you as well. It happens with all of us, but you just keep pursuing it. That's how I got here. And as I was getting here, I started to ask the question of big life, of what does a big life really mean? If I wanted to really live to my fullest potential in the greatest way I wanted to, what would it look like? For me, it was all about choice. And it would be different for everybody, right? But for me, it was all about choice. It was, if I can make the decision of what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, and I can do it that way, I am living big. I am living the life of my purpose. It was all about me having the choice. Nobody else gets to go earn it. I get to go earn it. And the moment I figured that that's what I want as a life, I started my research around it. I said, okay, what are the choices that I want to make, right? Because yes, you get to live a life of choice, but what are the choices that you want to make, right? What are the choices around time? What are the choices around relationship? What are the choices around business? What are these different choices? And those choices led me to find one of the things, and this is where I'll segue into the 4x4 bit that you talked about, is that one of the choices that I wanted to have was my availability with time, because I didn't want to become really successful but be a prisoner of my own business. I didn't want to become somebody who was really wealthy but didn't have time for his kids or his wife or his parents or anybody. I didn't want to be the unavailable son, the unavailable friend. I wanted to be the available friend. I wanted to be the available son, because I wanted to live my life with all dimensions being taken care of in one way or another. Things that I wanted to care for. It's everybody has a different perspective to it. Mine was that, right? So I said, all right. So one thing that I have to solve as a challenge is time, because what do we end up doing, especially as entrepreneurs? If we have 5 minutes free, what do? We just go back to work. We have 10 minutes free, what do? We go back to work. So like, all right, this is not going to be healthy, because you'll always have free time, because you can always send the message later, right? You can always make the video for your friends and send it later, right? So you can always do that call later. But right now, what's easy is to go behind the computer and type something out, right? Or whatever the thing that you think is important for your business. Right. So like, all right, that's not fair game. That's not fair to me, because that way I don't have space and time to actually create something like I create in business. How do I create with friends? If I don't have time and space, I will never create with friends. So I said, all right, let's research it. There must be a better way. Right. So I started researching about how human beings operate and what are some of the principles that we can follow to be more effective in less amount of time. Right. So I came up with my ideal day, which was me saying, I only want to work 4 days a week, and I only want to work for 4 hours a day. So I want to work maybe 16 hours a week, and that's all I want to do. And that's what and the rest of the time is for my family, for my friends, things that fuel me, learning, training, working out, whatever that is, travel, whatever that is. But I only want to work 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, right? So that's where the 4x4 comes from. Now you could have any version of that in your life, right? But the first thing is to define what is it that you want, right? So I defined 4x4 is what I want. Then I went, okay, so I want 4x4. Now, what do I need to do to be able to be highly productive and successful while I'm doing only 4 hours of work, 4 days a week? So I started studying human beings and started studying philosophies around time management and productivity and effectiveness. So the first principle that came across, which a very famous principle, is called the Pareto's principle. Pareto's principle is you do 20% of your activity yields 80% of your results most of the time, especially when it comes to financials or when it comes to work, right? 20% of your activities yield 80% of your work. It's a research that was done by Pareto, right? What I found is if you go through 80-20 or Pareto principle and you find one or two activities that are the most effective activities, you can actually get maximum results by just focusing on them. Now, sometimes if you do 80-20, you still end up with 5 or 6 activities. And that's what doesn't work, because 5 or 6 activities are one too many for somebody to be able to be effective at and be really, really good at. So I said, if your 80-20 gives you more than 3 activities, what you want to do is you want to 80-20 that too. So that means you want to find 1, maybe 2 activities at the max that you're going to hyper focus on that will create the greatest results for you. Right? So now we know that how many hours we want to work, how many days we want to work. So we have our vision for our life. Now we also know that there's only 1 or 2 activities that we really need to focus on. Then we go into the next phase, which is based on something called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that work will always fill the time you assign to it. Work will always fill the time that you assign to it. That simply means that if you give a task 4 hours, it'll take 4 hours. If you give that task 40 minutes, it'll take 40 minutes, right? So I said, all right, so that means I know what I want to do in life. Now I know there are 1 or 2 activities. Also, I know whatever hours I assign to these activities is the amount of hours that this activity will take, which means if I assign it less hours, I will be able to get the same quality. I'll be able to get the output still. But then the concern becomes quality, right? Because yes, you can get the same result, but will you get the same quality? And that comes from a gentleman called Cal Newport. He wrote a book called Deep Work. Phenomenal book, highly recommend it. And what he talks about in the book, in summary, in essence, is that if you put dedicated deep work time, which means undistracting, unchallenged time to one activity, you can create quality work over a shorter period of time versus you being distracted while creating that work. So I said, all right, so that means if I put 1 or 2 tasks that are really important to me in my calendar every week, if I dedicate a good number of time so I can do deep work in it, right? 3-4 hours at a chunk. And I can always assign that time to it. And that's the only time that's assigned to it. I will most likely get it done at the highest quality level. And that's where 4x4 comes from, because I have 1 or 2 tasks that I'm delivering over the course of a week. I am only dedicating 4 hours a day to be able to do that. But those 4 hours are completely distraction free. I'm not looking at anything else but that one task. And so that allows me to be able to create the same quality of work at significantly less time with much, much, much more higher impact of every hour that I spend in my business. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's phenomenal. And clearly it took you time of experience to come up with that framework. And so have you been have so once you came up, once you realized the framework, and you've been implementing it, what's your experience been like? Obviously you can get that work done into the quality and all of that, but what has been the outcome of implementing this in your life?
Well, the full life. I get
Yeah.
to live the life the way I want to live, because the one of the big secrets about 4x4 is that you use it everywhere in life. So that also means that once you're done with your work time, you just don't go, okay, now I'm free flowing, because that doesn't work either. You'll get bored as an entrepreneur. You can't just sit around and not do anything. You will assign yourself activities that allows you to enjoy all the pleasures of life, and not just the work pleasure, not only the purpose of creation, but also creation in life, creation in your relationship, creation in your partnership, creation on your health, all of that stuff. It's a total life, and you can have a total life, and you will have a total life. And that's the point of it. Once you're done with the 4 hours of your work, you go out and you do something else. Get yourself busy with something else that is more interesting or equally interesting that you were doing at your work as well. But you do focus on other areas of your life, so you don't feel the same amount of overwhelm or anxiety or dissatisfaction, lack of creativity, fog, all of those things that happen in your mind. The reason why we get drained, the reason why we feel depressed, the reason why we feel demotivated, the reason why we feel anxiety is because we have so much time looking at this bloody screen every time that it doesn't allow us to really be able to live a full and big life.
Wow, amazing. So with Live Big, what are you hoping that and this is in Live Big, yes?
Yes, it's a 4x4 per se is not in there, but it comes as a bonus with the book. So as you get the book, there's a full set of tools that we provide as follow-ups, because what we share in Live Big is perspectives. What
Mhm.
we are offering is that you will change the way you look at things. And as you change the way you look at things, what happens is sometimes you will create your own tools, and sometimes you want some tools. But we didn't want to make the book a 500-page book. We said, all right, it's a 200-page book. It's an easy read. It'll shift your perspective. Now, if you want additional help, additional tools, they're all available in the complimentary membership area that comes absolutely for free when you get the book. You just have to we'll give you the link inside the book for you to go there, and then you just add your order ID and you should be able to get access to it.
Fantastic. And so what is your hope with this book? What is it? I mean, I want to assume that it has a part legacy, but what can you talk about what your personal hope is, that this book does for others and also for you?
For me, the hope is for the hope that I wrote the book is that people understand that they have a choice and they can start creating it now, to be able to offer a perspective that is different, that allows you to open your lenses, open your view of the world, of the entrepreneurial world, or your professional life in a very different way, for us to acknowledge and be able to work on the greatest asset that we have as entrepreneurs, which is ourselves. Which is ourselves as entrepreneurs, our resilience, our strengths, our perspectives, our ability to show up and transform the story that we are writing. And that's really my intention of writing Live Big, is because I believe that all of us can grow our companies, but we don't have to kill ourselves doing that, which is what seems to be happening at all times. I mean, I meet entrepreneurs all the time. They're tired, they're hungry for growth, they're not growing the company, but at the same point of time they're working 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And I just personally, and again, it's not just me and my perspective. I actually tested all the philosophies that I talk about in Live Big outside of my companies. I actually coached and consulted clients and said, hey, can I get you, like there was one of my clients, she used to be 300 days on the road, 300 days on the road, big speaker, right? And when we started to have a conversation, some of the philosophies that I discuss in the book, I shared with her, and now she's not even 30 days on the road and makes more revenue than she was making before. Because it's about the change in perspective, it's about the change in dialogue. If we can shift that dialogue, we can change our realities. So my intention is to shift the dialogue. I also believe all entrepreneurs are very resourceful, very smart, and extraordinarily hardworking. But my challenge is I don't want our entrepreneurs to become martyrs of creating change in the world. I don't want them to uh, sacrifice everything else in life because they wanted to pursue this one dream. I want them to have the dream that has all of the elements. And I in no way say that you will have to compromise in growing your company, starting your company, or being able to scale up your company to whatever dimension you want to take it to. It will depend on you. But first, we got to work on you.
Wonderful. So, if people want to, as we wrap up, if people want to get more from you, if they want to continue the conversation, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just go ahead and get livebigthebook.com. That's the name of the website where you have the option of buying from any platform you prefer, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, indie books. If you're doing bulk orders, 1-800 CEO, all of those options are available on the website, livebigthebook.com. It'll redirect you to a page which will have all those options for you to buy the book. Or you can go to your nearby bookstore and just pick the book. And there's a secret link in there. Like I said, go to that link. You'll be able to get the tools. We can continue the conversation inside an ambassador group that we have for all book readers who are willing to participate and want to participate in the conversation.
Brilliant. So, before we say goodbye, any final words you'd like to leave my listeners with?
Absolutely. The final words that I like to leave everybody with is to remember that there is a choice. It doesn't matter wherever you are in life, what stage you are in life, if you're challenged, not challenged, if you're excited, not excited, whatever that is, you always have a choice. Yes, it'll be hard. Yes, it can be painful sometimes. Yes, it could be difficult sometimes, but you are a wonderful human being and you have a choice to switch your reality the way you want to switch your reality. Even if it is a little bit hard, you can get through it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.